Hello, Tip of the Tongue listeners. Before this episode starts in proper, just wanted to let you guys know that we've been getting a lot of requests for this podcast to actually be a podcast that you can actually download. And you can now do that thanks to our friends at Fanoff Media. You can download every single episode up through this one might take a couple days because we still got to get it to them if you're listening to it just on release. But if you go to Fanoff Media, you can get it, you can download it, and you can listen to them on the go, like an honest to goodness podcast, because we've been super lazy about that. Also, if you ever want to shoot us questions or anything, my Twitter handle has changed because anything related to Welcome To stuff is like 5 years old now. So instead of that, I wanted to make it my name. So it is now @BrendanBlaber. So if you ever need to message me a question or follow me, that's the place to do it. All right, let's start the episode. Hello and welcome to Tip of the Tongue, a monthly advice podcast for voice actors, producers, and anyone else who wants to make projects on the internet. Everyone's got that passion project they've wanted to make since as far back as you can remember, and this is where we help you learn how to make it happen. I'm Jello.
And I'm William.
I'm a graphic designer, illustrator, voice actor, writer, director, and producer.
And I'm the other one. Writing is a difficult medium to break into. You can't share your work as quickly as you can with art or music, and finding an audience can be tricky. Finding your footing in the professional circuit can be even harder. Where do you start? Who do you show your work to? And how do you get hired to do what you love? We don't know, but we've got a special guest today who does. He's the story editor for Cartoon Network's Sonic Boom and co-head writer of Nick Jr.'s Sunny Day. Please give a big welcome to Alan Denton.
Hey, guys.
Yay.
Hey, happy to be here.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Alan, could you just, as a starting point, how are you in the position that you are currently in? Is like head writer on certain shows that are like big network shows?
Well, I can give you it's kind of a winding story if I can go into it.
That's fine, yeah.
No, that sounds great.
Yeah, I moved to LA about 11 years ago, right after I graduated from college, with some vague aspirations of being a TV writer, but no real plan. And I just sort of like was networking around, going to mixers and everything, and other writers. And eventually I found that animation was just easier to get into, because a lot of sitcoms and live action shows, they're guild shows, they're union shows, and they tend to be written mostly by staff. And animation, there's no union protecting us. So all the scripts are mostly done by freelance, not staff writers. And so there's just tons of opportunities to break in, because you're much lower risk to hire in animation.
Okay.
So I met a fellow at an alumni mixer named Bill Freiberger, who he took a shining to me about 2 years after I met him. He got me a job as a writer's assistant on a show that he was working on. And then from there, as sort of like a thanks for taking that very, very low paying job, I was essentially working for free. He was able to finagle a friend to get me my first animation script on a show that his friend was head writer on. It was a European, like a French produced cartoon called Wreck-It Rabbit.
Nice.
So Bill was working on that show, and he essentially guaranteed me and said, Alan's a good writer. You should let him write a script, and tell you what, if it's bad, which it won't be, I'll rewrite it, basically. Like, he was just saying, like, there's no risk. Just give him a script. I owe him. And that was my first produced. That was kind of how I got into this whole start, which is like know a guy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then a few years later, Bill became the head writer on Sonic Boom, which hopefully some people know is on Cartoon Network.
It's very good.
Yeah.
I try to recommend it to as many people as I can.
Yeah. So when Bill got that job, I was already positioned. I was already kind of in the industry a little bit. I had some produced work behind me, and my writing partner, Greg Hahn, and I were working together. And so we were able to, through the connection to Bill, submit to getting on getting a script on the show. And we did a few scripts. Well, our first thing was a rewrite on it, on an episode, and then we did a good enough job that they said, okay, now you can pitch episode ideas. So we pitched a bunch of episodes, and several of them got made. We do a good job on those scripts, and then things started rolling. And so by the end of that first season, Greg and I were creative consultants on the show.
Oh.
So it was just sort of like taking an opportunity and proving yourself and going and going. And so we kind of got into a system with Bill where, you know, we were helping break every episode with him, or not every episode, but a lot of the episodes we were breaking with him or working with the writers and everything and working on their outlines. Just creative consultant was the job title. So then when the show got renewed for a second season, we were already part of the team. And so we got a little promotion and we became story editors, which was a staff position, which was
Nice.
amazing. So that was, you know, I make that sound very quick. We got the staff position maybe 2015, I'm going to say.
Okay.
So I graduated in 2007. So about 8 years into LA, got that big opportunity. Otherwise, you know, it was writing freelance scripts and everything. And so we wrote on that on season 2 as story editors. And then beyond that, from that credit, I had freelanced on this Nick Jr. show, Sunny Day, when their co-head writer was leaving after the first season. I, again, was in kind of a position where they liked me and they liked my work and everything, and he left, and I kind of was able to slide into that job. So it's all kind of, was all kind of circumstantial of sort of being in the right place and doing some small freelance work and proving myself and then getting an opportunity for a promotion and everything. And that's the very, very abridged version of how I ended up as kind of a head writer in kids TV.
No, very cool.
That's always what you hear in like any medium. Is just like, no, it's always like there's a ton of talented people and you always just got to be outputting that work and waiting for that one moment where you can seize an opportunity while doing a ton of networking.
Well, I feel it's this weird feeling of guilt when people ask for my advice on like, how do I break in? I go, well, I can tell you what worked for me, but it's all like everyone's story is kind of this circumstantial, like I had a friend and they gave me a shot and then this happened and then this guy got fired and then I was, you know, it's always this weird, you know, journey in.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's really no straightforward path. It's just completely different and random for everyone.
Yeah.
And even if you're just like, well, this worked for me, 4 asterisks after that.
Yeah. Well, then you get like the baby boomer writers who are like, well, I broke in 1983 and it was no problem. Why don't you kids just go knock on a studio's door, hand them your resume?
Because they will get a security guard to kick me out and then put me on a list. Is why I won't do that.
It's nice to hear that there's that ridiculous baby boomer mentality, even in that field as well. And it's not just like, oh, well, why didn't you just do that for McDonald's and things like that? It's just all of these businesses.
That's the one for voice acting too, is everyone who's like over the age of 40 who does it. And you're like they're all just like, no, it seems really hard nowadays because then there was just like not as much competition, so it's just like, yeah, I'll just do this, and then you just did it, and now it's very difficult. But I guess because part of the constantly like working and honing your craft while networking and working hard and waiting for that one foothold that you can grab, you do need to like obviously continue working in that field at some level and continue being in practice. So a couple people were asking if you had any tips of like good ways to like either find freelance work or keep yourself busy and basically to have things in your portfolio if you ever need to show them off to someone. Beyond just obviously I like writing and I'm doing it for because it's something I like doing, because sometimes that can't be your main job if it's also the thing you want to break into.
Well, yeah. So if you're looking to break into writing or TV writing, film writing, whatever, you are 100% going to need a sample script, or usually several. And if you haven't got any paid work, that's okay. You can write, sample pilot scripts of, your own TV show. A lot of people prefer that.
Oh, okay.
And I like to, especially when I was starting out, I try to stick by this, but it gets harder and harder. I like to have one new script of some kind every 6 months.
Okay.
Like one new original sample every 6 months. Because it's really like, you don't know where your opportunity is necessarily going to come from. And when before they hire you, they always want to see if you're like a good fit for exactly this thing.
Right.
Somebody might say like, do you have like a female-led action sample script? And they go, all right. So if you're writing like a new script every 6 months and you're trying to make them all kind of demonstrably different, that gives you a better shot when you get it in, because again, you never know where that in's going to be exactly. It might be in a preschool show, or it might be on kind of like an adult oriented web show or something, and you always want a sample that'll be the closest match to what they're trying to hire you for, if that makes sense.
Yeah, just kind of cover your bases and just have something in your back pocket if someone does ask for something very specific. It's like, I have something kind of like that, and then you're not frantically trying to come up with something.
Yeah. So and so that's why like a new script every 6 months was very important to me. And again, that they were all different. Like if I wrote, if I wrote like a wacky kids animation sample, the next one I want to do is like maybe an adult sitcom sample. You know what I mean? So that it's not, if you keep writing the same type of script over and over, you're not really building your portfolio.
Yeah.
You're just sort of, maybe you're writing a better script each time, but you're not expanding your opportunities.
Excellent. No, that's good to know.
Or just do what you want to do. That's so, like all of my advice comes with like, or do whatever.
It's just like in your walk of life or what you have gone through, this has at least helped or worked for you.
Yeah. Well, something that I impress upon people, like you have to keep your skills honed, and you have to be always working on something new and kind of getting better at writing. Because every script you write, it gets a little easier. You can do it a little faster. You figure out the process a little better. You're becoming a better writer. And like being a really great writer is about half the battle. The other half is getting a connection to getting an opportunity.
Right.
Meeting somebody and getting in and getting a shot and finding someone willing to read your script who could maybe do something for you. So that's a lot of work in itself. And then you also have to be ready for when that opportunity happens by being decent.
Yeah. Because the entertainment industry does not slow down. They are not going to wait.
Yeah. Well, when I first moved to LA, I was hoping it would be easy. I was hoping that I'd show up and they'd go, "Thank God you're here, Alan. We've been waiting for you. We know that you would be a great fit on any of these shows. Come on, we'll show you around." And that's not really what it's like. Because there's like a certain, like I knew right when I moved out, there was a certain cockiness of watching stuff on TV and going like, I could write this. I'm as good as this.
Yeah.
And it's like, will somebody just give me a chance? I know I can do this. Somebody just give me a chance. I've come to realize there's so many people who can do this. And there are plenty of people who haven't gotten in who can do it better than me. It's just kind of about making sure you can position yourself in the best opportunity to show what you can do.
Right.
One of the questions I got a lot of, and we've been getting since we started Tip of the Tongue, and people are like, do more writing episodes. People always ask any combination of like, where are places where you can get like, just any platform where you can get some honest feedback on your writing in progress, because I know a lot of people kind of write in isolation and they don't actually have anywhere that they can get like, here, can you read my thing and see it? Because it's not as easy to be like, hey, I'm on like DeviantArt or Tumblr or whatever. Here's my art. What do you think of it? Etc. Because writing's like a time investment.
Yeah.
So if you had any tips on that of like where to find people, where to use as a platform for feedback, or even just like ways to incentivize that own like practice and the way to improve yourself through any kind of constructive criticism.
Well, it is hard to get feedback on your writing. The easiest way is to kind of make it like DeviantArt or Tumblr, in that turn it from a text medium into a visual medium, by which I mean just make something, that's the easiest way to get your writing seen by as many people as you can, is if you produce a web series, or you collaborate with some friends who maybe know some animation skills and make something. That's the best way to get attention to yourself, because otherwise, you're like a nice guy with a script, and there's so many nice guys with scripts.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I know, right? With me personally, it was about being in Los Angeles, which is so much easier because there's a community of people all trying to break into the same industry and everything. So with me, it was about finding that community of people that were about on the same level as me, all pretty serious about this and all trying to break in. And you just sort of develop a friendship with all of these folks who are sort of your contemporaries and your peers. And then you're sharing scripts and work, and you're all showing each other and getting feedback. And you kind of realize like who's got talent and who's maybe not as great, who's more of a hang around guy or something. You just sort of like figure out, and that's how you sort of like get to know everybody, coming up. And then when a couple of your friends start to get jobs, then you sort of, maybe they're in the position to help and everything. And that's like the most natural way in LA, how it works is like, there's like a new class of people that just all of a sudden start showing up. Outside of LA, I would advise trying to find a local community of people in person. And I know it's like, I know how difficult that is, because I don't like meeting people either. As a writer, I don't like going to mixers and parties and socializing with people. And so I know it's the worst, because this industry has forced writers who are by nature loners and antisocial to like, the most social ones are the ones who do the best. And I'm sorry. But, I would advise kind of finding a local collective of people. Again, they don't have to be all writers, but all kind of artists or creatives. And if you could collaborate on something, even better. But just kind of like have folks, contemporaries, that you can all kind of help out each other.
People who are in like the same area and have like, oh, like as a creative, like I really respect the stuff you output. I think you'd have good feedback on this. And also when you have that little network, anytime anyone gets any like, oh, you got accepted to this thing, that's great, that's awesome. You get to build each other up that way.
Yeah.
And the more connections you have is like a nervous system, so that anytime, like literally yesterday, someone asked me to do like a writing thing, and someone asked about an audiobook, and I was like, I'm too busy to do either of those, but here are like 4 or 5 people I work with that do that kind of stuff all the time. So here's their information if you want to talk to them about it.
Yeah. So, you want to kind of get that community going. I mean, hopefully the community already exists, and then you just sort of insert yourself into it. Where eventually you're you show up and you're like hanging out with people and you're the new guy and you feel kind of weird. But then after like 4 months, there's some other new guy. And so then you're realizing like, wait, I'm part of this. I'm an equal. That's sort of how it worked best for me anyway, was finding kind of, it wasn't anything as formal as like going to a writer's group,
right,
or something like that. It was just kind of having friends who you respected and saying, hey, would you mind taking a look at this? I'd love your feedback. And then being reciprocal when they send you their stuff, and you're kind of all helping each other out and collaborating and doing favors.
Yeah, just lift each other up.
Yeah. Because it's like if you kind of punch above your weight class and you're like finding people who've been working in TV for 20 years and stuff, that you can find people to read your stuff, but it's always like a favor that you're asking, it's like kind of from an unequal place. And so it's, you can only ask it so many times and everything. And I just like having, developing a community of people I like and trust.
Earlier, you like specifically mentioned the LA community. I did get someone who asked, is it possible to enter like a professional writing field in a serious manner without moving to like either coast? So like, like the New York area or primarily LA. Like, is that a thing you can do? I imagine it's a lot harder, even if the answer is yes.
Yeah, there's some people do it, but they're mostly outliers.
They're like the outlier.
Yeah. I guess the way I would explain it is, so many people want into this this industry and this field that physically moving to LA is sort of the first way to see who's actually serious about it.
Yeah.
And so I've never worked with a writer who was
it's just very uncommon.
Yeah. On Sunny Day on the Nick Jr. show, there were some writers in the UK that I worked with, although that was the other co-head writer was in the UK. So those were kind of people that she had connections with. I was about to say I've never worked with a writer outside of New York or LA, but that's not true. I worked with some in Europe.
Right.
But and on Sonic, there were some writers based in Europe as well, and we had to work with them. It was more difficult. Everyone prefers usually to work with somebody that they can meet up with and see.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
Yeah. If possible, my advice is to move to LA, which I know is like an enormous thing to ask of people. I tried networking before I moved to LA, and some people take phone calls with me or email me, but the second I moved to LA, that's when I felt a difference in the relationship, where then people were starting to actually introduce me to people who might help me out and, I don't know, take me more seriously, I guess.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to be like, oh yeah, this guy is here and exists. Here he is in person.
Yeah.
Yeah, instead of just a person just out somewhere randomly that could honestly flake at any time, just disappear off the grid with no consequences. It's like, okay, well.
Whereas if you live in LA, you can find their house and stake it out.
Yeah. Yeah, there are many more opportunities to be creepy when you're in LA.
So just to change gears a little bit, wanted to ask some stuff about like either like the structure of actually writing an episode for television specifically, and also like specifically like I guess instead of just like writing in general, for which a lot of the tips we've been talking about I think are pretty applicable. But one people asked was, it's kind of a simple question, but just how long is a typical script in case of like in terms of like, page count versus minutes, and what are some of the constraints you have to think about?
So I write for kids animation. Usually those are 11-minute episodes, 15 minutes with commercial, but the actual content's about 11 minutes or 11 and a half minutes. Those tend to be about 14 pages per script.
Oh, okay.
And in terms of line count, like we also, some measure it by page count and some measure it by line count, or number of dialogue lines in a script.
Right.
In terms of line count, about 120 lines per script. And if you were writing a half-hour animation, just double that. So about 28 pages and 240 lines per script. It depends on how that show prefers to work. I've been in both.
Another person asked, this is a buddy of mine. He's actually done some work with me on some of my like semi-animated videos. Do you have any insight into the differences between like a script-driven story structure that like, so, you start with a script and then it works from there, versus storyboard-driven, or like I don't know what do you do for, because you do animation?
Yeah.
So is it and obviously I don't think you storyboard anything, but
yeah,
is there any storyboarding in the process for either of the shows you work on?
Well, so as a writer who is not talented in any other way. I don't work on storyboard driven shows because those tend to be they would have the writers put together just an outline of the story, and then they hand it off to the storyboard artists who draw it out and also write all the dialogue in it.
Okay.
And so for board driven, if you're an artist, if you're a really kick-ass artist and you want to write, you know, there's board driven shows are what you want to go for, and they're like always hungry for great people. I've been in meetings where, you know, they've been like, yeah, we don't have any roles for writers. Oh, unless, can you draw? I'm like, no. Like, yeah, we don't have anything for you. Yeah. So yeah, most of my stuff is script driven. Yeah, board driven shows also, like a board driven show might have maybe three writers on the whole team, and it's usually the creator, the creator's best friend, and maybe one other guy, you know, and then the team of board artists and writers. It's just a different world. And so in my world, in script driven shows, we physically write the whole script, and then it goes off, you know, it goes off to get recorded by the actors and then turned into a radio play where it's just, you know, like it sounds like an old time radio drama where you just have all the dialogue and sound effects. And then that goes to animatic where, you know, storyboard artists just kind of draw pictures relating to the dialogue. And then you know, kind of make these animated storyboards, and then it kind of gets animated gradually out from there to animatic to rough animation to, you know, and every time you're kind of refining and giving notes and stuff.
Early in that process, when you're doing the script driven thing, what's it look like actually being like, here's the confirmed final script? Like you come up with the pitch and then you write it, and then you know, you probably have to like deal with network censors or some kind of like executive for certain things. Like, I know you're the story editor now, so I assume you're probably the one who sometimes gets those scripts and is like, yeah, maybe change this, and this, and then it should be good.
Yeah. Well, so each on a traditional show, you know, there's about 4 stages to a script. There's usually after the pitch gets approved, there's outline, first draft, second draft, and polish, which is just third draft. They call it polish, like it's some, you know, they pay you less for the polish because, oh, this is just a polished draft, and it's usually just as much work. So, you know, when a script is approved, you kind of work out the story and you write your outline. And then there's tons of notes from everybody. You know, the animation director has notes, and the network has notes, and the rights holder everybody has something to say. And then you pile all those notes, and then you write your first draft. And then there's more notes from everybody because now it's a physical thing, and, you know, and then, you know, you have all those notes, and then you write your second draft, and then it's more notes from everybody, and then you do your polished draft. And sure, at any part of that process, it could just require an entirely new rewrite of the whole thing. Usually, you know, in my position as a story editor or a head writer on something, I end up doing a lot of that work because I feel guilty. Like, if something happens that changes the whole story, I usually just say, I'll do it. You know, and I just kind of, I'll write over the writer's stuff and everything, and just kind of like to get it done. Because usually by that point, I don't know, there's so many voices involved. I'm a big proponent of, after you get the script from whoever the writer was, just letting them invoice for the whole script, and I'll take it from here, because it just goes faster that way.
Right, yeah, too many cooks.
Yeah. Did that answer your question at all? I'm not even sure if it did.
Yeah, no, it did. No, that was basically what I was looking for. Thank you. We got many, many variations of this. The catch-all was just, how do you target a specific audience when you're writing something? But my favorite sub-question there was, when writing a show for kids, you have to make sure your jokes are like understandable and appropriate. What are some ways to put yourself in this mindset to work and like basically write like Sonic Boom specifically, it's like, it's a kid's show, but it's like, I mean, I am 24. I think it's very funny. and you constantly see.
Oh, thanks, Jello.
No problem. You guys deserve it. You do very good work. And you'll constantly see people online like making compilations and being like, "Whoa, guys, this show's actually really funny."
Yeah.
And it's very like and like anytime people see those, it's just very universally agreed. Like, yeah, this is really funny, even though it's marketed for kids.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
what's a good way of striking that balance?
Yeah. Well, I do love those. Like, wait a second, this is actually funny because it's a way of giving us a compliment, but also hurting my feelings because because the assumption is like, oh, I figured this would be hot garbage, but look, it's not bad. You go, okay,
They did it.
okay. I wish you didn't start at that point, but okay. Especially when working on Boom, and this was sort of a trickle down from the head writer Bill Freiberger down, and my writing partner Greg Hahn and I had the same philosophy of like that was a joke driven show. You know, we always wanted to make sure there were plenty of jokes in the scripts, and we just sort of we would write what we found funny, what we personally found funny. You know, we would pitch jokes, and if it made us laugh, that's the only way it was going in. And even if that's not, even if the initial joke isn't kid appropriate, you know, you kind of like, if you get a joke that everyone finds funny, and then you try and figure out, is there a way to translate that joke into something that is kid appropriate? And so that's sort of the philosophy that I've tried in my work to have in my work since then, is that I don't try to think about, I guess, like what do 4-year-olds find funny or something. I just think about like, what do I think is a good story? What do I find funny? And then is there a way to make that appropriate or understandable to this age range and meet the guidelines of censors or educational advisors and all that. It's, you know, it's a lot more work to do that. But I find that you're writing from a much less cynical place, and it's rewarding if you actually like what you're putting out there.
No, that's fair. Absolutely.
That's how I try anyway.
Well, it's clearly working.
Oh, thank you.
For the scripts I've been writing the last year, because I don't remember where I read it, but I saw some philosophy forever ago that was like, you should try and write comedy that like doesn't use curse words or swears if you can, and try and make it like have that punch of its own merit. I've been trying very, very hard in every So This Is Basically to like never swear, and I recorded a bunch of cut lines today, and they're from like my original script versions.
Yeah.
So I could put it on Patreon, and like all of them were just like, man, this fucking thing's awful. And I was like, oh right, I didn't polish that at all. Oh well, it's going in there, I guess.
Yeah. It's yeah, I mean, you don't have to, if your audience isn't kids, you don't have to tone it down, or
yeah,
you know,
like it's not like, I'm not saying it's like inherently like never write swears. It is like low brow.
Between seasons of working on Sonic, I made a web series for this website Guff, and it was called Grandma versus the Internet. And like there was cursing in that, and like the pilot episode was all about dick pics and stuff. And it's like, you know, that was going for something different.
Right.
And in that case, I was just kind of coming up with what I find funny, and then not making it. I was just making something for me, you know. So I didn't feel the need to translate it or
Tone it down or anything.
think about everything in a different way and stuff. So,
Yeah.
you know, if you're going into kids animation, I would advise trying not to have, you know, orgies and curse parties.
Oh, okay.
In your scripts, but hey.
So you're not going to be pitching a Nick Jr. episode about dick pics, is what?
No. No.
A bold strategy.
I specifically like this one question we got because it's very tailored to Sonic Boom, I think, specifically.
Oh yeah, let's hear it.
Which is I don't think it's that negative.
Okay.
Basically, if you're ever doing an adaptation of something, which is becoming super common, like they just
Sure.
released the new She-Ra show on Netflix, stuff like that. what are the main concerns or things to be wary of when adapting or making a continuation of other media, whether it's comics or movies or books, into a TV series, or just like, like here's the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles show, and we've got a bunch of adaptations, and here's the new one. I don't know how much you actually like are aware of that.
Yeah.
Other than just like, boy, people sure aren't satisfied for no reason.
People sure are mad that Knuckles looks like what he does.
Yeah. I have opinions on this stuff. I personally don't think that a new version of a thing should have any effect on your relationship to the original thing. Like if there's there's a new DuckTales and you don't like it, that doesn't mean you can't love old DuckTales just as much. And then you don't have to hate new DuckTales because you don't care for it. You just don't, just let it go, man.
Just don't engage with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Things to be wary of. I mean, from the side of actually working on, on Sonic Boom, one thing that I learned pretty quickly, or was made aware of pretty quickly, was, Sonic the Hedgehog had been around for, by the time we started, like 23 years or something. There's 23 years of history of Sonic the Hedgehog before we started. And we were occupying a small amount of time in that history, which, so we always had to make sure to respect all of the Sonic stuff that existed before us and all the stuff that will exist after us, and make sure the character, especially of Sonic, is consistent. And, because if we have a story, an episode that we really like, but it's not consistent with the way Sonic would act or Amy would act or Tails would act, it really, even if it's a great story, this franchise is bigger than this specific show or that specific story. And so that was something that I didn't really, I guess, appreciate before I worked on a legacy show, was that it's like, this thing is bigger than you and this thing you're working on. So, if we were working on just an original show about 5 little animal character friends, we could probably be a little more out there with the stories or follow our initial instincts. But then we also wouldn't have that cachet of, the audience instantly knowing who these characters are and having hopefully a positive association with them from the start. As for what I would be wary of, if I were developing a show, I would say it's always, if you're on the side of like adapting something, just try to be as in with the community of that show as possible. Again, using Sonic as an example, I felt like our show, once the Sonic fan community got to know us as people, the writing staff and the voice actors and everything as people,
right,
and understood that we love this thing too, and we know our stuff. Maybe we can drop in some trivia about some old thing. Just that they understand that we're friends. That helps a lot too, rather than, I don't know, some carpetbaggers who are just, coming in and doing what we want, and, just showing that, I don't know, that there's some respect. It's still about that respect of the history of the character and everything. And so, especially in the second season of Sonic Boom, once we got to know the fan community a lot better, you saw Bill and team were putting in a lot more Easter eggs about Sonic history or about internet jokes and everything. And I think that helps. I think it helps a lot, just to let people know, hey, we're all friends here.
Yeah, and you always see people reacting positively to like the Sonic snooping as usual.
Yeah.
I see they're like, they said it. They said the YouTube poop line again.
Yeah, that was Sam Freiberger put that one in. I'll be honest, at the record, I had no idea what that was about, and everyone was giggling, and I was like, okay, all right.
Well, you people like it so short, it stays.
All right. Man, I can't imagine being like, all right, why is this like a fun, why are people laughing at this? You look it up, it's like, oh, this is weird and terrible.
Yeah.
Why is this the thing?
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes
the kids like it.
Yeah, you start going into like, what is this about? And you get down this rabbit hole and you're like, forget I asked. I'm just gonna leave.
Understandable.
Just leave with more questions.
Yeah.
This is another. I don't know how much experience you have with this, because from what I know, the stuff you've worked on is more episodic. But
Yeah.
how would you go about plotting, like basically plotting out over the course of a season or just several episodes, any level of, be it like a character arc or explicitly, hey, these 4 episodes of this show, they're basically one story all in a row. And like, just how do you plan out what you're going to do for X amount of episodes or seasons?
How do you plan it out?
I know these are all like extremely blanket questions that are
don't
really lead themselves to here's the 2-sentence answer. So I apologize for that.
I think it's easiest to plan those out if you have if you know you want to tell a bigger story that, say, takes place over 4 episodes. I think it's easiest if you can just sort of at least begin with, your start and end points for each episode. If like episode 1, I need to be, episode 1 is, I don't know, these characters invade, and then episode 2, they've been taken prisoner on the home planet. And if you've got a big story, even if you don't have the minutia of what happens in each episode, if you know where it ends, you can kind of, I believe you can find a story to fit just about every set of parameters, I guess. And that's, I don't know, it's a very odd way to answer that. But so I think for an arc, you just kind of have to plot out the key moments of where would each episode end, and then just start, filling in bullet points until eventually you've got like a whole episode's worth of content for each sequence.
Nice.
Entirely fair answer.
Didn't feel like a great answer, but all right.
That makes sense.
That's a pretty tricky question to answer succinctly off the cuff. So I think you did a good job.
All right.
Yeah. No, you're crushing it.
That was all the big ones I wanted to hit. Will, did you have any left on this list that you wanted to cover?
Yeah, the one that I was curious about, and I just don't know how much of an impact this would have, just because of the whole process is quite long when it comes to writing a script and whatnot. Does improv in the booth ever impact the script? And if it does, how do you keep it in the show? Like, there's probably a lot of steps involved because you got to make sure all the bigwigs are happy.
Well, yeah, improv in the booth happens. Yeah, it happens if you've got actors who feel comfortable. It's better. Some shows record one actor at a time, and in that case, it's kind of hard to get a good riff going because they're by themselves in a room,
right?
Going line by line, out of order, and there's no rhythm to it. But if you have the whole cast record together, which the better shows do because it feels a lot more dynamic. Sure, they might have like a little riff or something, and if that's encouraged, and if the director is feeling it and they like it, they might hone that a little bit. And then, the if it stays in kind of is the decision of the showrunner, as he's putting, I mentioned before that there's like, after you record, you do that radio play. And so,
right.
I mean, part of the showrunner's job is choosing what takes from the record to use when they put, so if they like something that maybe was a little bit of different than from the page, it shouldn't be a problem to go in because it's probably the same idea of the line, unless it's something
really left field
nuts that needs a whole new, round of approvals from the bosses. If they're,
right.
It's usually, it's usually those improvs are because there's a line or a moment that the actors are having a hard time connecting with exactly what you said, and they're trying to get the idea of that down. So that's usually better, right?
Yeah.
That's been my experience anyway.
I saw an interview once with H. John Benjamin, who's the voice actor who plays Bob on Bob's Burgers and Archer in Archer, and someone asked him a kind of similar question to that, and he was like, yeah, no, for Bob's Burgers, we do like the Simpsons thing where we all record together in a room, and a bunch of it is like improvised. Like Linda's character in that show, the wife, didn't used to sing, but the actor kept like doing random little sing-song bits, and eventually that became part of her character. Whereas on Archer, the script is like very, very tight and leads into itself and almost can't be changed at all. Yeah. So they don't record. I can't remember if he said they do record as a group or not, but I remember he was like, yeah, no, I think they record alone, and we pretty much are never allowed to say anything but what's on the page. Maybe we can change like a contraction or something, and that's about it.
Yeah. So, every show's different. I like the ones where it feels more collaborative at the record session. Because that's, I don't know.
It's more fun for the actor, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm not somebody who feels like what I wrote is the most perfect form of this idea. I want to come into a record session and there's a director who's got his own opinions and ideas and isn't afraid to say them. And then actors thought about it and they've got their ideas for how to do it. And I usually am of the opinion of I am the least talented person in the room when it's at the record. So I want everybody else to chime in and, let's all punch it up together. Because, nice. Writers, we're very insecure.
Oh, jeez. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
That seems like as good a note as any to wrap things up.
Yeah, please love me.
That'll be the episode title.
Not even about what we're talking about. Episode 19. Please love me.
I mean, people would click it, I think.
Yeah, that's why I'm in Los Angeles. That's why I pursued a career in TV, right? We're all damaged.
Oh. It's a bunch of damaged people trying to lean against each other in a way that all their nooks and crannies click, and they make a structure that doesn't fall over.
I remember once I was at like a barbecue or something, and somebody just said like, so why'd you decide to go into TV? And I was just like, what kind of question is that? It's because I was a kid and the life that was coming out of that box was better than the life I was living. So in order to be important, I needed to come out of that box. And so I moved here. And then all the other writers were like, yeah, same. So that's, they were all just like, yes, obviously.
Yeah, kid gets it.
Yeah. You don't have to be damaged to be successful. I'm just kidding around, everybody.
I imagine like if this was like an interview like between two ferns, after you say that, just like I'm just kidding around, there'd just be like this blank 1,000-yard stare into the camera as it zooms in for a second or two. Once again, thank you so much for coming on and giving us an hour of your time. Is there anything you'd like to plug? Anywhere you want people to be like, hey, you can follow me on this social media, et cetera, et cetera. You can watch the things I do here.
Sure. Well, if you haven't seen Sonic Boom and you're in America, both seasons are on Hulu, and I think it's really good. I would start with the episodes Battle of the Boy Bands is a really solid one.
Yeah, that episode's great.
Cowbot is a really solid one. And season 2, season 1, there's one called Tails' Crush, also really solid. Season 2, there's a 4-part episode called Robots from the Sky that Greg Hahn, Bill Freiberger, and I wrote. That's a really good one too. It's a nice 4-part long story. So check those out if you haven't seen Sonic Boom. If you got a little sister, check out Sunny Day on Nick Jr. It's a preschool show, so I understand if not all the listeners are running to it. But if you got kids in your life, give it a shot. And you can follow me on Twitter at Alan the Writer, ALAN the Writer. I tend to give out writing tips and sarcastic writing tips at about an equal level. So you're going to have to just figure out if I'm serious or not. But you can check me out on social media. Sometimes I do giveaways and stuff. So it's a fun time.
Cool. Excellent.
Thank you so much. Just for anyone listening, we have one more episode of Tip of the Tongue after this. then we are finishing it because Will and I have very few more things that we know about that we can talk about. So
Whoa.
the last episode is appropriately going to be on ending a series, cutting your losses, and taking what you can before. This sounds really like I am so tired of this old ball and chain podcast. But no, that's a really important.
You call it cutting your losses.
Because that's what it can be. It can be salvaging things from a project that you need to like downsize away for one of many reasons. We'll talk more about that next time. But if you have any questions about anything like that, you can message us over on Patreon. It's just Yellow Apocalypse at Patreon. Also, Brendan Blaber on Twitter. I changed my Twitter handle. It's just Brendan Blaber now, which is my name there, or Tumblr. I'd like to take this time to thank our top 10 patrons this month. Dave.
Chase'em Creed.
Johnny Dragon.
Smake.
Michael Lubina.
Stephen Edwards.
Ewan Reed.
Red Bro.
Nick. Just says Nick.
And our top donor, Bearsy. Thank you all so much for listening, and we hope to see you for our final episode.
Toodles.